Hey, good to see you. You caught me in the middle of fiddle practice here. This is a tune that I play quite a fair bit in my traditional Irish music sessions at the pubs. We all play it, we don't even think about it, we just sort of rush through it and go through it, go, 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 play that. We've been playing it for years. But the thing is, even though you've been doing something for years and you feel really confident and comfortable with it and you feel you're very proficient, you've been doing this basically, your entire life, you can still make mistakes. You can still do things incorrectly. And if you don't stop to check yourself, you can reinforce making those mistakes and you can justify in your mind not doing something the best that you possibly can be. Now, when you're young, you may not really care about doing things well. You may not care about striving for excellence. And this is something that is specific to each individual. It's your life. Live your way. If you do not want to strive for excellence, then don't. If you're happy with mediocrity, then live that way. You are your own person. But for me personally, it's important to strive for excellence, to be the best that I can be. So no matter what I'm doing, whether it's archery, knife throwing, singing, playing various instruments, it's important to take a step back from what you're doing. You get lost in the sauce very easily. It's important to take a step back and just make sure that you're doing the best that you can be. Look for where you might be making mistakes. Look for where you can improve and strive for excellence. Do the best that you can do and be the best that you can be. And that applies to game development and to art as well. Today I'm going to discuss Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. We recently saw a new trailer from the Nintendo Direct. In this video I want to discuss some interesting quirks that I've seen and some mistakes that developers are making with the game. They're just minor, small things, but I believe that these are the kind of developers that do strive for excellence. But when you're doing game development, it's easy to get wrapped up in your work, and you have so much to do in game development. So I'm going to point out some things here that could use some improvement, and it's important to keep in mind I am not here to complain, to criticize, or to belittle the work that the developers have put into this game. I think this looks excellent, but there is some room for improvement in the same way that I think that I'm playing that fiddle tune just fine. I've been playing it for years. I play it all the time, but I've been doing some things wrong and I've been making some mistakes. So I'm just taking a moment during my day to figure out what I'm doing wrong with the tune and to point out areas where I can improve. I will reward one heart piece to people who comment in the sections down below. If you know the name of that tune, comment that, and if you're correct, you will be rewarded with one heart piece. Okay, I'm going to have a quick sip of my Hyrulean brew, and we'll get started on today's video. Now this trailer shows us a few things that are new, that are different from the initial reveal trailer. Energy swords are cool. I kind of have a weak spot for energy swords. I think they're really neat. If you are doing your own game development and you're interested in achieving such visual effects, what we see here are, we actually see a combination prominently of two visual effects here. These are post-screen processes. We have two here. We have chromatic aberration, which sort of displaces pixels and it makes certain colors prominent the farther you get from the image, the center of the image. So we have radial blur. Radial blur is more intense along the edges, so they are implementing chromatic aberration and radial blur. If you want to achieve this kind of effect yourself, especially in Unity, this thing is quite easy. You'll find post-screen shaders all over the place. Those are the two effects that you will want to use: chromatic aberration and radial blur. Now, there's something kind of neat here. I'll let this play a couple times. I like this effect here. The camera, if you'll pay attention, the camera shakes and there's an increase in the camera blur as the slash goes across the screen. I really like that kind of camera work. These developers have been making this kind of game for a very long time, and so they're very good at what they're doing here, and I just love the expressiveness of that. That's neat. Now, this is called a shoulder cape, what this character is wearing here. This is called a shoulder cape or a capelet, and a capelet sounds kind of neat. These things are a total pain to rig. And when I mean rig, I mean to prepare it for animation. The reason being is because it is not shaped like something organic, like a human's limbs. Those are quite easy to rig up and prepare for animation. This is a sort of free-flowing thing, and there must be some sort of physics simulation. These are frustrating. I really don't like having to rig and animate capelets. And what we see here is we see the body of the character is actually clipping through the capelet. You can see the body is poking through. It's referred to as clipping. And that's just because capelets suck. I'm not criticizing the developers. I'm just saying, yeah, it takes a significant amount of extra effort to make sure things like this don't happen. And I'm not sure whether it's worth their time to address things like this. It's such a small, minor detail. It doesn't hugely negatively affect the overall experience. So you wouldn't necessarily dock someone points for something like that. But I just think, yeah, these are excellent, experienced developers, and they face the exact same struggles that I do. Capelets suck. Down with capelets. Okay, I think I've revealed myself to be an anti-capeleter, but that's just how it is. But this sort of physics simulation on the hair and the capelet, that's satisfying. That sort of, yeah, I like that. Now, we'll take a look at when they do their Avengers pose here. I do have something negative to say. I have something positive and negative. I like that there is a sense of there's a uniform here. They all have sort of similar colors. It feels like they're on this task force and that they're all working together as some sort of unified force, like a Super Sentai team. What I don't like is all of their color tones are basically exactly the same. All of their tonality, in terms of tone, the lights and the darks, they're exactly the same. They're extremely similar or exactly the same, and their color choices are basically exactly the same. If you were to blur this image, and if you were to desaturate it even a little, you would not really be able to tell who's who, except for Zelda, who has the yellow hair, but she's wearing the same color tones. And that is disappointing to me because one of the reasons I really enjoy Zelda is for the vibrant and interesting and varied designs for characters. And even the body shapes, except for the Goron, all of the body shapes are extremely similar. So I'm going to be honest here, and I don't want to be negative. At this point, I'm going to react as a gamer and as someone who enjoys the Hyrule Warriors games and Zelda. My eyes were glazing over on the two trailers that I've seen here because all of the characters look exactly the same, and the color choices they've chosen are very dull. I would refer to this as the brown Zelda game. Everything is so brown. And unfortunately, in this case, they've used so much white and black. And white and black, when it comes to character designs, white and black are palette cleansers. They basically give you a free pass to use other colors on your characters so your character does not look too loud. They do not are cluttered in terms of color, but unfortunately there are not enough other prominent colors. So we just have a bunch of palette cleansers. All of these characters are just palette cleansers, and it's unfortunate because they're very dull to look at. All of their body shapes are similar. They're all this sort of slender, beautiful thing, and the color choices unfortunately are not that interesting. There's something here. This is some kind of body horror. I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm looking at, but it feels like The Thing transformation. It's some sort of body horror, and it's kind of upsetting to look at, and I love that. I love the horror elements when it comes to Zelda. This is upsetting, whatever's going on here. I don't know whose body that is, but it looks like their body has undergone some painful and uncomfortable transformation. There's an interesting detail to me here that it's interesting because I want to understand what's going on here. Why does this enemy have a screen door transparency? This enemy is partially transparent. In general, we employ this technique when geometry is close to the camera and we don't want geometry blocking the camera. We would use it on boulders and trees so that they don't obscure the view of the game, but this enemy isn't anywhere near the camera. This enemy is sort of, they're coming in from the side of the screen here, so there's no reason why this enemy should have some partial screen door transparency. So I would like to understand why. And what is interesting is that their weapon does not have that partial transparency. As you can see here, even the little enemy here as well has the partial transparency. So I'm curious as to why, and why isn't the weapon affected by that? I'm just curious. Let's see here. There is something here. There's a little something we notice is Zelda's leg clips through her dress. Now, the dresses on. I hate having to rig dresses for animating. I'm going to say that. It is not fun. I'm sure there are people out there who excel in it, who maybe some people out there really enjoy rigging and animating dresses and preparing them for physics simulation. These clothes are very billowy. They have a lot of physics simulation, and unfortunately, there is an end result of her foot is clipping through the dress. This does not negatively affect the overall experience, so it's not something that the developers really should pay attention to. It's just something I want to point out as a developer, that this kind of thing, it's not easy to do this, all right? It's complicated. There's so many steps that go into it, and things like this just happen, but it doesn't negatively affect the overall end experience, so, you know, that's not something that you would ding somebody's points for. I just noticed it's just, you know, you notice fun little things like that. This is so sick. Sorry. I really like big robots. Whatever this thing is, whatever it takes, I would like to play as a Zelda piloting a Gundam. That's what I want. I hope this is not just a special move. I hope this is a whole weapon for her to use, and that's a whole weapon set. I will be rocking whatever that loadout is. That's cool. So I really like that. Something I've noticed here, it's a little disappointing. The use of volumetric fog is very heavy. We have a very thick, dense fog here, but it's not being used in an interesting way. In general, you implement volumetric fog, volumetric lighting, when you have a strong light source, and you can create interesting visuals with the lighting and having light rays and shadows. You have objects that occlude the light and they cast interesting light shafts. I don't see any of that here. It's just a very thick, dense atmospheric fog with no interesting use of lighting, which is a little disappointing, because that's normally something we see. I really like the look of the trees here. It looks like a hand-drawn painting. It's very pleasant. I really like that. But there's a little weird quirk here, is that the physics simulation on the hair are too active, and you want to show expressiveness, and what is important in games is not realism. What is important is expressiveness. So sometimes in games we exaggerate things. We have more movement, more sound, more expressiveness because it's interesting to look at. But sometimes it can be a little distracting if you see that the hair is too active. You'll see it fidget here at the end in a way that's a little distracting. I'm going to point that out here again. Let it play. Just there. The hair's, it's too active, and this is very easy to fix. You just adjust the settings on your physics simulation objects. Just there, see? We'll let it play again. The physics are too active. What I do like, though, there are definitions to sell a sense of weight, whatever these hair ornaments are. It does convey a sense of weight, so we'll let that play again, and I do quite like that. But it's a little distracting. Something we're going to see physics that are too active. Again, if you have a look at the ornaments here on the necklace, you'll see them wobble like crazy. It's just a little too wobbly in that for the physics is referred to as sleep. It's sort of the minimum force or the minimum velocity before a physics simulator is sort of no longer processing the jiggling and the wiggling. The sleep could be adjusted on that because that is wiggling way too much and it's kind of distracting. And again, there's a balance between realism and expressiveness, but also there's internal logic. And internally, what are we saying? What are we communicating by having that be so wiggly? Does this woman have skin that is so smooth that she has zero friction on her skin? You are explaining something by showing people something. Now, here's an interesting quirk as well. There is an error in this scene. It's not something that I think anyone would care about. No one's going to care about this. This grass is so pleasant to look at. I really Really like the way that is. We have a couple visual effects here. We have a depth of field which blurs the background a little bit, but there is a problem. If you have a look at the grass here, this grass here is not being blurred. It's actually quite harsh and sharp, but this grass, it is being blurred. Why is that? I'm just going to zoom in on that a little bit so you can have a closer look at what I'm talking about here. This grass here is not being blurred. And the reason why that's happening is there's a conflict between transparent and partially transparent geometry in the game world. And you can even see trees behind it. They are having an issue being blended as well. So it's actually very difficult for game engines to sort things in terms of depth if they are transparent or partially transparent. And this is something referred to as Z-fighting. I've mentioned this in a previous video, and I'm so frustrated because I wish Z-fighting was related to Dragon Ball, but it is not. Z-fighting occurs when a game engine has a difficult time sorting the depth of the objects, and sometimes things are not processed correctly, and so things that are in the background are drawn on top of objects that are in the foreground, and part of that is related to the issue when it comes to this depth of field effect. And depth of field heavily relies on your depth, your distance from the camera. We'll refer to that as depth. So depth of field relies heavily on the distance of the camera, or the depth, and it is conflicting with, I think there are particles in the background that are partially transparent, and the grass here, I think it's conflicting with the grass that's partially transparent as well, and so it's not able to blur the grass properly, whereas that's not an issue that we have here. This is being smoothened out quite nicely, and it's quite sharp and harsh here, and so that's just a fun little error that we see, that the grass is not being blended and smoothened out and blurred correctly. And that's an issue that I experience with my games as well, when I have depth of field and I have fog particles over a body of water like a little pond, and suddenly my depth of field effect is broken. It blurs everything out, but then the water is having a conflict with the particle effects, the little fog, the mist, and then it's not being blurred. So it's challenging. There are so many things that can go wrong with game development, and it's just a juggle. It's a balancing act, and you have to juggle so many different things. This is kind of thing is interesting to me, to see developers, that, oh good, I'm not the only one that has to deal with these frustrating things. This is such a pleasant scene to look at, but I just noticed, I didn't realize this before, but both of these characters they're basically always in Super Saiyan 3, which is pretty cool. It's quite difficult, but I guess since Vegeta has it, everyone can have it now. I really like the use of particle systems, particle effects for the low-lying fog here. This is something that a novice developer would not use a particle system to create a sense of mist, low-lying mist along the ground. A novice developer would rely entirely on a complex, high-resolution volumetric lighting and volumetric fog, but that's so expensive, and the more that you use it, and expensive in terms of rendering, and it affects the frame rate. The more you use it, the more present it is in the scene, the heavier the performance costs and the worse the performance. This is something that we've seen in the videos for Elden Ring on Switch 2. They're relying very heavily on volumetric fog in certain areas. This is just a particle system. It's significantly cheaper to render. So it's nice seeing that. It's also very expressive because it adds a sense of depth to the world while also helping certain visuals pop out, like the tree pops out a little bit. Like it helps the grass stand out. It's visually very, very, very pleasing, very interesting. Your Breath of the Wild shot just here, and it is, if you have a look at this, take a look at the pollen. It is allergy season in Hyrule, and man, I hope you've got your antihistamines stocked up. Again, this is a scene that's a little disappointing to me because the developers have not made use of the volumetric lighting here to create an interesting visual scene. Take a look at Breath of the Wild. I know which scene I know you know which scene I'm talking about. Take a look at this shot from Breath of the Wild, and you will see that the developers for that have a very different understanding of lighting because they've used their lighting system. It's basically the exact same lighting system, but they're using it differently to create something that's visually expressive, to communicate something, and that is something that we're not seeing anywhere. Is a stronger understanding of the usage of light to create an interesting scene. Here there's a problem with the shader settings for the ground here. The ground looks very plasticky when there's a bright light source near it. It's a little disappointing to see this. It's easy to make mistakes like this because you're not paying attention. You have so many other things to deal with, but this is not something that's, I think, is pleasant to look at. It looks like a novice Unity game when you see textures that are plasticky like that. And this is so easy to fix. It's so easy to address that. And it's something that I hope the developers do address, because it's a little distracting how plasticky that looks. And I understand what they're going for. I think they're trying to say, oh, these are rocks, and you want to make them more specular, but there are much better ways to adjust the settings on your shaders so that your rocks don't look plasticky. And this is not what wet rocks look like. You might argue, oh no, they want the rocks to look wet. That is not what wet rocks look like at all. There's the shader settings, and their specular map has just not been generated, and their settings are not applied correctly. This is an unfortunate scene in terms of color palette overall. Everything is the exact same color, and I know we've had similar scenes like this in the other Warrior games where everything is red and this is a blood moon, but unfortunately, the enemies are the exact same color as the lighting, as the ground, as the background, as the sky. There are interesting ways to implement something like this. What you do is take something like, what would fix this entirely is apply a rim light, and you don't even need to do this via shader. You can do this by adding a secondary light source, an extra light source to the scene, and have it framed from above and behind so that the enemies have a harsh light blue outline on the back of them so that they pop visually from the environment. This does not change the intent of the scene. It does not compromise the artistic integrity of what they're going for here, but artistically and visually, in terms of visual communication, visual expression, it is stronger. I've worked professionally in photography and have done studio photography, and rim lighting is extremely important to help your subjects stand out from the background. That is something that would visually make this scene much more interesting, is having a light source of a different color temperature. I strongly recommend a cold, harsh blue light, something similar to their eyes. Have that be a rim light. The light source seems to be coming from that direction. Have the blue light overhead from behind coming from that direction. Things would really pop, and it would elevate this and just make this look so fantastic. This, unfortunately, to me as a gamer, is my eyes are glazing over when I look at this, because everything looks exactly the same. Now, there is something that I really like here. This is an incredible performance consideration, and I'm wondering if they've done this for the Age of Calamity. I'll have to double check that now. The shadow resolution for the player character is significantly higher. Look at the resolution of the shadow here. It's very high, and the shadow resolution for the enemies is extremely low. Now, shadows are quite expensive to render in games, and so having the shadows be lower resolution means that there is less rendering cost, which means this has less impact on the frame rate. So that's a great performance consideration to see. And then there is a huge logical problem here. Can you see it? Or should I do a Nuke's top 10 referencing? Did you see it? There. Again. Did you see it? So, there's a problem here. There is a weird shadow behind the player. What is this shadow? What is the shadow saying? What is this shadow conveying? This is a huge problem because it does not make sense. Why is the shadow here, and what is casting the shadow? Take a look at this effect here. This is not a particle effect. This is a 3D model with a shader that makes it look like some kind of cool energy particle effect. So this on its own looks fine. It's normal to use a 3D model, and you would then animate that 3D model so you can squash and stretch it and swing it around and do whatever you need with the model. This is a 3D model the same way that the player character is a 3D model, the same way that the tree is a 3D model. This special effect is a 3D model with a particle effect shader over it. The problem is that it is set to cast shadows. When we implement a 3D model in a game, we have to determine, we tell the game engine, hey, this should be casting a shadow, this should not be casting a shadow. This is an oversight. The developers forgot to tell the game engine, they forgot to define this piece of geometry should not be casting a shadow. And so we have the strong light source casting a shadow. It makes no sense for this to be casting a shadow because internally what the game is trying to tell us is that this is an energy beam. Energy beams should not be casting shadows. So this is a logical discrepancy, and it's very disappointing to see something like this because these are highly experienced developers. They're fantastic, they're brilliant, and I'm not going to insult or belittle their efforts. This is something that it's a mistake that any developer can make, but it's a little concerning that it's made it this far into development without them catching it. You can see the shadow here, it's a logical discrepancy, it makes no sense, and it doesn't look good, and it's quite confusing. You can see it's actually like a little banner. It's quite flat. So, oh wow, interesting, it is like a little banner. That is fascinating. So this is an energy beam in the context of what we're looking at, and energy beams should not be casting shadows. It makes no sense. And it is quite distracting because it's a huge shadow that's flying all over the place. So that is something that I hope they will address. I don't know if anyone watching knows anyone on the development team, but if you can let them know, hey, you guys forgot to turn off shadows for these, please do. Because I really want to play and enjoy this game. I want this game to be the best that it can be. These enemies are covered in goo, and what's pretty neat is as the player character hits the enemies with goo, the particle effects are also brown goo, and it looks like when the enemies sustain enough damage, the goo is knocked off their bodies, as we'll see here. You can see the goo. That's neat. I wonder what mechanical function the goo will serve. This is really nice. This is a nice water shader. It's neat. I like seeing that. When there's a harsh light source, as you will see in a moment, you'll actually be able to see under the water. Oh, did I go past it? When there's a harsh light source, you can see under the water a bit, and that's cool. I like seeing that. Really neat water. In the last Hyrule Warriors game, any kind of water would tank the frame rate. So, I try to avoid rainy levels and any level that has any kind of little ponds or puddles. Something that I think is so interesting here is this lady here has maximum sass. I think everyone got they got, like a memo, and they said, oh, sass it up, we're going full sass, and this lady right here, that is maximum sass. And you think, whoa, like everyone's, like they're all right. She's sassing out, but hold on. Then we have this JoJo's Bizarre Adventure pose right here, and that is a JoJo's pose. So she saw the other chick sassing it up, maxed out on sass, and she goes, I'll up you one, and she's got a JoJo pose stuck up right there. So I really like that. It's fun. I like these power poses. Really cool. That's fun. And I have a lot of respect for these developers. I think they do, a very good job. I really enjoy these games. This is tough. Designing a heads-up display. Let me go ahead and get on out of here. It is difficult to design a heads-up display that can adjust to basically what is half the vertical height of your resolution, and they've done a great job building a heads-up display that, it works, it's functional, and it can be compressed down to half a screen because it is not easy. There's so many logical challenges to that. So them doing that, I applaud them on that. I'm in the middle of my own game development. I have a massive amount of work to do. I will be using Game Share. This is an excellent feature. I want to see more of this. Fantastic. Game Share, 100% excellent, fantastic. I want to see more games use Game Share. I want to use Game Share in my games. So this has been fantastic. Now, one more thing, and I think this is so neat, very cool here. There is a special, really cool technique here. Let's have a look at this transformation sequence. Did you see it? There's my Nuke's top 10 impersonation. Did you see it? I'm gonna pause at a pivotal moment here. This uses a technique in cinema. It's referred to as the cowboy switch, sometimes referred to as the Texas switch. And in cinema, it's a technique where they seamlessly substitute one actor for a stunt actor, and it's done in a way to where they're obscured and you can't tell that they've switched them out. So I'll pause it. It looks like this is going through a full transformation sequence, but it is actually not going through a full transformation sequence. It goes into what looks like it's going to be a full transformation sequence here. You see, it looks like it's going to be a full transformation sequence, but then a frame later, it's a totally different model. This is a different model than what we were looking at previously. It's a totally different asset. And it's mostly visible because clothes suddenly appear in it. Now, the reason they do that is because any sort of animated 3D object in a game requires something called a rig. And a rig is basically your skeletal structure, your bones. You have a rig inside of you, and it's called your bones. And your bones and your tendons and your joints are all attached in a very specific way so you can animate your body in real life. Here's one of my animations. So, you cannot just take a rig and then change its bone structure and say, now it has different bones. You would just create a different model, and it is extremely difficult logically. It's a massive amount of work to try to do that, to take something with one body structure, turn it to a totally different body structure, and then have a totally different set of animations for it. It requires a massive amount of work, and there's no reason to do it because you don't really gain a benefit from it. So what developers benefit from is obscuring the transition. They've hidden the transition right. This is basically the last frame. There it is. And there's the switch. There's the cowboy switch. But we are not in cinema, we are in video games. So I'm going to call this technique the Hyrule switch. So they're doing the Hyrule switch here. This is basically the last frame that you see. This is actually the airplane model, and they've made it seem like it's making a full transformation, but it is actually disabling this game object, it's disabling this model, and it's enabling another game model, this one here. Folks, we're calling that the Hyrule switch. This has been so interesting. I'm very much looking forward to this. I think the developers are doing a fantastic job, but as I've discussed before, there are more improvements that they can make. We can always do better. We can always strive for excellence, but we should always pause to appreciate how far we've come, how much we've improved our skills, and how much we've learned. We can appreciate that, but we must always strive to improve. We must always strive for excellence. Thanks very much for spending some time with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed taking a look at that. I've got to practice my fiddle a bit more. I'll be attending more traditional Irish music sessions in the pubs this week. So I've got to get back to work on my games. I'll try and do a second video for today. Thanks very much. Take care. Be well. And a special thank you to my patrons. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all your support. If you'd like to check out some of my games on Nintendo Switch, you'll see them on the screen here. People tell me they really like Ghoul Busters. And if you want to see some other videos, they will be up on the screen now. Okay?